I'm sure a lot of people in the hockey world have seen the video, have seen the back and forth between Rocky Wirtz, one of the owners for the Chicago Blackhawks, and Mark Lazarus of The Athletic, also Phil Thompson of the Chicago Tribune. Essentially, the finer details are this. The Chicago Blackhawks held a town hall meeting, basically just to field questions from, well, media personnel were there, obviously. And Mark asked a question about the team with regards to Kyle Beach and how they were going to handle things going forward. And there was a very big pushback between those two. Phil Thompson of the Chicago Tribune tried to follow back with a question of his own. Even more pushback after that. The big quote that obviously stems from the video: we're not going to talk about Kyle Beach. We're not going to talk about 2010. We're moving on. CJ, what were your thoughts when you saw the back and forth between Rocky Wirtz and Chicago media and just all the, and pretty much everything else that has been surrounding this incident?
Well, I'm stunned that would be the response. I mean, let's, for the purposes of anyone maybe who hasn't looked into this or knows everything about it, this was a town hall where the reporters were invited. So it wasn't a case where those two gentlemen were somewhere they shouldn't be. They didn't hijack an event. They were in a place where they were invited by the team. I mean, I can't believe those questions or those types of questions weren't anticipated ahead of time. And in light of that, it boggles the mind that would be the response. I mean, any goodwill that we might say, or any positive steps that the Blackhawks have taken, since this whole story broke, obviously they reached a settlement with Kyle Beach. Stan Bowman lost his job. Joe Quenneville, Florida, lost his job. I mean, there was some fallout, I guess, from this, what happened in 2010. It all goes away the minute you're saying we've moved on. Just because you might have paid some money or whatever, just because there's no active lawsuit as it pertains to Kyle Beach, doesn't mean that the public's moved on. It's certainly, I don't know how this isn't a question in everything the Blackhawks have. I mean, how do their current draft picks feel? The parents of those young players, what has the organization done to ensure that something like this couldn't be repeated? I mean, I think these are all pretty pertinent questions, pretty obvious questions. And I don't say that as a slight at our colleagues in Chicago asking those questions, but I mean, the fact that was a response, it's hard to put your mind around. You said everyone's seen this video. I can tell you, Julian, making my calls today just around the league on all the issues, this is something everyone in the NHL world's talking about. I'm in Las Vegas right now. The All-Star weekend's about to get up and running. I mean, to some degree, this is at the forefront of that. Gary Bettman's going to speak on Friday to reporters here in Vegas. And so, I'm sure that will be a major talking point then. And so, yeah, it's a big story. It's an unforced error. There's no excuse for it. And I know Rocky Wirtz did put out an apology through the team on Thursday night, but that's nowhere near good enough. When you see the video, when you see how indignant, how strongly he was. I mean, there's other people on the stage, right? His son, Danny, who essentially runs the Blackhawks day to day right now. Rocky Wirtz isn't as involved anymore at this stage of his career. I mean, he wanted to step in and then Rocky stopped him. It's these sort of changes in an organization have to go top down, I think. I mean, obviously sometimes ground up works, but I think you need to have a change culture. You need to have the people at the top buy in. You need to empower those below them to address whatever's going on. I'm sure that's what's going to come out of this at some point. I would expect Danny Wirtz will, formulate a response to those questions, but there was no reason for his father to react the way he did on Thursday.
Absolutely. I know from my vantage point in talking to people about this, whether it's reporters at my level or just fans of this, a lot of reactions have varied from disgust to basically questions about what the league is going to do with Rocky Wirtz, or should Rocky Wirtz step down from his position with the Blackhawks. I'm wondering, because you've also talked to people in league circles as well, what have they been saying about it? How have they been reacting to it? Obviously, I'm sure it's not good. It's not good reaction for the Blackhawks and for the league as well. But what have they been saying? What are they calling for? What are you hearing?
Well, what I can tell you is, as of Thursday afternoon, when we're recording this, the feeling is he's not going to step down from his position as the chairman of the Blackhawks. I think that the thinking there, and I'm just repeating what I've been told, as opposed to I'm not saying I'm advocating this point, is that because he's sort of handed over control of the team to his son, Danny, he's not really that involved, that, there's almost nothing to step down from. whether or not the NHL has any further repercussions, that's an open question. I think that's something we probably won't learn until Gary Bettman addresses the issue publicly on Friday. But remember, the Blackhawks were fined $2 million, after the Block and Jenner report was completed. That same report absolved Rocky Wirtz of having any knowledge at the time of what was going on with Brad Aldrich, the video coach, and Kyle Beach, and sort of the cover up, if you want, or the lack of action that followed it from the organization. But in this case, perhaps a fine or something else could be coming from the NHL. I think some of it, quite frankly, will be tied to how long the story persists. Who is calling for what? I saw Sheldon Kennedy, for example, had a pretty strong tweet about what happened here and how this is what paralyzes these organizations. Someone, in Rocky Wirtz, who has the power he does, basically shouting everyone else down. Sheldon Kennedy, remember, got hired by the NHL. Like, he's part of some of their initiatives. And so, it'll be interesting to see, I guess, as the league maybe takes stock from some of those, stakeholders, if there's any further action taken. But, as of, almost 24 hours after this action happened, the expectation is that he won't step down from his role with the Blackhawks.
So then I wonder if that means that the apology that Rocky put out hours after the dust up is sufficient. I mean, from my vantage point, I don't know if it is, but I wonder if the NHL or other Chicago fans may deem it as such.
Right. Look, there's real world consequences here too. Like, Blackhawks image is tarnished through this. I mean, there's no other way around it. I think we spoke of it at the time, when Kyle Beach did the interview with Rick Westhead, just seeing how powerful it is. It's hard to watch that and then look back on their Stanley Cup winning team in quite the same way. And, the fact that they went through that whole process, it seemed like they were trying to address issues. Obviously they reached a settlement that with John Doe 2 and Kyle Beach in separate lawsuits. There was a path to move forward there, right? The path, of course, is acknowledging openly what has gone wrong, talking openly about what steps you've taken to make sure it's not repeated. And so now we're months on down the road, and it's just like, well, what was the point of that? Like, he thinks we're all just supposed to forget about it. Like, the people that buy tickets haven't forgotten about it. Obviously, the media members like ourselves that cover the game are still talking about it. The commissioner is going to be asked about it. This is it's a huge step back. I think it really is a huge step back for anything that they were trying to do as an organization, to say that this was something in the past and we're going to move forward. I mean, now they've got more work to do there. And I hope that there's some real soul searching, because, at the end of the day, it's not just what you say, right? It's what you do. It's what you feel. And it's pretty clear how Rocky Wirtz views that entire sort of segment of his team's history, which he was a part of, how that incident went down. I mean, I didn't see a lot of remorse in that answer, if you know what I'm saying. I didn't see a lot of soul searching that had been done. And so, it's a difficult thing for the league to handle, I think, in some ways. But that being said, remember, the league put out a sort of a code of conduct type of memo earlier the year. I think it was late October. And to paraphrase a long memo, it said basically, you got to keep your own houses in order. Like every organization is responsible for what's happening behind closed doors at that organization. Like, the league can't possibly know everything going on inside 32 teams' front offices and dressing rooms at any given moment. And I read that as putting a lot of onus on teams to take care of these issues, to address them properly. And if they don't, of course, the league can take some action. And so that's kind of where we're at with the Blackhawks right now. I think it's just, is there any further action that's coming from the NHL? Because, as I said, I don't get the sense that Rocky Wirtz, other than his apology, intends to act in any other way.
Yeah. And I don't get the sense that the organization really learned anything from what happened. We were all devastated when we heard Kyle Beach speak to Rick Westhead, and the findings of the Block and Jenner report came out. And obviously, yes, there were people from Chicago who lost their jobs because of their roles of what happened with that team. But that response from Rocky Wirtz just kind of made me, you know what? Steve Dangle had it right. Steve Dangle put out a tweet saying it wasn't about accountability. It was about covering it up. And that just reads to me like Chicago, after everything that went on and all of the pushback and the blowback that they endured as a result of Kyle Beach stepping up and telling his story, they're all about just covering this up and just hoping that people forget about it and go right back to just watching games and acting like nothing happened. But I'm sorry, we're not going to do that. I absolutely refuse on my part in my small role in the hockey world. And I know you feel the same way too. And other hockey members as well will not let this be forgotten. And I don't know what world Rocky Wirtz thinks he's living in, where people are just going to not ask him questions about that. How do you have a town hall and not expect questions to be asked about that when this is like one of the first times you've had a media availability since the report came out, since you were fined $2 million?
It's the first time he's taking questions. Like
it's tone deaf.
Yeah, there was prepared statements before, but nothing. The other thing I'd caution you there, though, and it's just a small point of clarification. I think there's a lot of people in that organization that have learned from this or don't believe in this. This is the setback, as he has the most powerful voice, arguably, in the organization. He's the one signing the checks. He's at the top of the food chain. But that doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of people below him that do want to see some changes. That maybe they've even done some things. Like this is an opportunity for him. It's actually a great PR opportunity to speak to some of the things they might have addressed and some of the changes they're contemplating, and to talk about their process and how they've gone on from that. And so. When we're saying the organization broadly, like a lot of people make up an organization. The problem here is it's the person at the top of the organization that hasn't learned, and certainly doesn't seem, just wants to move past it, and we can't talk about it. Blah 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 blah. But I know there are people that work for the team that don't feel that way, and hopefully now their voices can be heard a little bit, like internally. I don't mean that they have to come out and do a press conference, but hopefully, I'm always like looking for the good that can come from the bad, right? But like it was hard to watch that. It's hard to imagine an original 6 team that's won 3 Stanley Cups in the last, 12 years, whatever it is, already being this low again. Like, the Blackhawks, they're not on the radar the way they once were. And I think that this is more critical maybe than they believe that they, I think the sport needs a lot more, man. And the business of the sport needs a lot more given to it. And the Blackhawks really should rethink their positioning here.
They should rethink their positioning, and they may need to basically kind of not reboot the franchise, but I still think that in light of everything that is going on, there's no better time to consider just changing the way that they look. And I am talking about the logo here, then if not now, like relatively soon. I still think this is an opportunity for them to show that they are willing to, change for the better. And you do bring up a good point there. I'm sure there are people in the organization who want to change and be better. But when the guy at the top is saying what he's saying, I'm sorry, but he's arguably one of the biggest representatives, not the biggest representative of the organization. It's kind of hard to not distance those two. So it does make it easy to kind of blanket, I guess, the statement that I made over the entire team. But you are right. There are people who want changes to be made, and I'm sure they exist within that organization. It just does not look good. And they're going to have to do a lot of soul searching and a lot of changing in order for them to kind of really take that step and feel as if they've really moved on, not as if what they were trying to do at the town hall that we saw on Wednesday evening. It just doesn't look good, CJ. It really just doesn't look good at all.
It doesn't. And that's where the calls for maybe people wanting to see him step down is that would be a tangible step of action, right? As I say, I don't have any reason to believe that's going to happen, but I can see where that view was out there that was important. Sean McIndoe, who does writing for The Athletic, who's always funny and right on point. Like, I love his tweet where he said, like, he's saying they don't want to talk about 2010, like a week after they hired Marian Hossa and Patrick Sharp to be part of a search for a GM. And, this isn't really being broken down here, but you have to wonder. I mean, look, there's only 32 GM jobs. So obviously someone, you'll find someone who'll take anyone that he or she can get their hands on. But, I just wonder, especially when it comes to maybe some of the top candidates or those that feel that they have a line on another job, how, like, you want to go work for these people right now?